so many different types of relationship in the world, aren't there? It seems that relationships are really what makes the world go round because without relationships, we don't learn, we don't grow, we won't be able to do business. So, any way you slice it, relationships seem to be one of the most important building blocks of life on this planet. Now, we often hear the term strategic relationships being tossed about. And what really is a strategic relationship? My definition of a strategic relationship is a collaboration between two or more parties based on a shared vision, shared goals, and shared objectives. We're all trying to get to a place based on doing similar type of work. And so for me, strategic relationships have played such a key role in my 20-year corporate career and now in my business as an entrepreneur. My 20-year career went such that I went for 20 years in corporate Canada without ever having to send a resume to apply for a job somewhere else. And it started off with one relationship. I remember working for a government organization many, many, many years ago. And I used to love going for walks on my lunch break. And so every time I walked up the road, I saw a group of about six men. They were always standing together outside of a particular building. They were always chatting and enjoying themselves. But every time I went by, I would just say hello. I wouldn't stop to talk to anybody. I said nothing more than hello or good afternoon, how are you? And that's it. Many months down the road, or maybe weeks down the road, one of them stopped me and he said, "May I ask you a question?" And I said, "Sure." He says, "Why is it that when you pass by, you always say hello to us?" And it puzzled me. And I said, "Well, why shouldn't I say hello to you? Is there a reason?" And he said, "No, the reason I ask is because you're the only person who ever acknowledges us as you go by." And I found that really strange. As a matter of fact, he said, "You're the only Black woman who ever acknowledged us as you go by." And I found that strange. And I said, "Really? Well, that's a great thing then, isn't it?" And he said, "It absolutely is." So he explained to me that he decided to ask me on that day, because that day, that was going to be his last day on that strip because his company was moving to a new building. So he said, "What do you do? And how can I help you?" And I found that strange because no one has ever really asked me before, "How can I help you in terms of career aspirations?" And I explained to him of my background in technology and that I'm actually in the process of transitioning. I'm looking to find something different to do. And so he said, "We're moving. And in the building where we're moving to, there's a technology company there. And I have already befriended one of the managers. It's a new startup, and I'm sure they're looking for people. So here's my email address. Send me your resume. I'll pass it on to him and see what happens." Well, I did. Sent him my resume. And within 2 weeks, I received a call from one of the managers of this new company. I went for the interview. I got hired on the spot. I stayed with that company for a year and a half before they folded. Unfortunately, we know that most startups fold within 5 years of their genesis. So this company folded within a year and a half. And in the process of closing things down, I was one of the very few people left there because everyone had started to jump ship. And so one of the vice presidents and I started chatting one day. He was looking for some documents and he couldn't find what he was looking for. And so I, in my quiet little self, because I was so reserved back then, you wouldn't get much out of me. I was so reserved. So if you didn't know me, you wouldn't know what I was capable of doing. In any case, he didn't really know me, but he came and he said, "I'm looking for XYZ about a certain customer. Would you happen to know where I can find this information?" And I said, "I'll bring it to you." And so I printed the information out. What I had done is I had created a database of all our customers with all the assets that we had helped to implement and install in their locations. And he needed to know certain customers who were interconnected, who was not connected, what equipment was where. And so I just printed it out of my little database that I made and I brought it to him. And he was blown away. He says, "Where did you find this information? This is exactly what I need. This is bargain. You don't understand." And for him, it was just like the best thing since sliced bread. And so I told him about my database and he says, "Show me." I walked him through the database. I showed him all the information that was in it. And he says, "Who else knows about this?" I said, "No, nobody but you." And he says, "Don't tell anyone else." He says, "Don't tell anyone else." And so I didn't. And whenever he needed information, he would just come to me. So I became his go-to girl. The time came and he says, "I'm leaving now because I found something to do, but I'm not leaving you here because you're way too smart for me to leave you in this company. But I have a friend over at a certain place, and I'm going to send your resume over to him. So give me your resume." I gave him my resume. He sent my resume over, and I was called for an interview like the following week. It was in one of the big banks. And I went for the interview. It was for a supervisory position. Now listen to me, people. I was so reserved. How on earth am I going to supervise anyone? I've never supervised anybody before, much more in a financial setting, even though it was still in technology, but now it's in a financial setting. I know nothing about working in finances, right? Anyway, I went for the interview. Sorry, his friend liked me. I did well in the interview. He hired me on the spot. Then he brought me to the manager that I was supposed to report to. How interesting. Anyways, I was hired by the vice president, who my manager reported to. So I started working at that company. I stayed in that company for about, I would say, 10 years. Yeah, a good 10 years. And then they started letting people go everywhere. So, I stayed in the position of supervisor for 3 years, and then I transitioned into project management, started managing projects, different sizes of projects, small, medium, large projects. And then some of my project manager peers started getting let go. They started packaging them out of the company. And one of them left and moved to a different company, this time now in a completely different sector. This is now in the energy sector. And he called me one day and he says, "Hey, I understand that you're where you are and you may be looking to transition." And I said, "Yeah, I am." I explained why. And he says, "Don't fret about it. As a matter of fact, there's a job over here with your name on it because I know what you're capable of. Send me your resume because I know the hiring manager." Ladies and gentlemen, I did. I sent my resume to him again. And within a week, I was being called for an interview. I went through 3 different interviews for this position, and I got the position. And I started working there. And for me, that was one of my favorite work experiences in corporate Canada. I had never met a leadership team like the leadership team at this particular company. And it is so important who's at the helm of these companies, right? Because in the long run, what they say is that people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. So I'm talking to you straight from my heart today. There's no script. There's nothing that I'm referring to. This is just notes from my own experience. So I spent maybe another 5 to 7 years there. And then the guy at the top, he left and things began to change. And because he left and things were changing, I noticed that people were moving here and there and everywhere. And I'm like, the flavor of the company has changed. It's not the same as when, this particular leader was there. And so one of the managers left there and he went to another government organization. And he says, "Hey, I know you really like working at that place. You love it. I know you love it. But would I be able to convince you that maybe it's time for you to move on to something else?" I said, "Talk to me." He says, "I'm at this place. And exactly what you're doing there and how you have built stuff and how you have managed to, help with the transitioning and the changes that were needed. And they need that here. And they have no one to do it. They don't even understand the framework and how it works. You're certified in it. Will you come at least take a look at it and see?" And I said, I don't know. Things were changing at my present company, but I didn't want to leave because there were certain things there that I was just like, I don't know if I want to give all of that up. Anyway, he convinced me. I went for an interview and they made me a very lucrative offer. And so that started another, 8 years of my career. And then, over time, I realized that I really didn't like being in this organization at all. As a matter of fact, I didn't like it from the get go. I did not like it from the get go for a number of different reasons. And I got placed on a particular project where I came in contact with some people, one young lady in particular. And I remember after that project had ended, I moved back to my department. And one morning traveling to work, I saw her on the subway and we got to chatting. And I told her, I said, "Hey, I think I'm done here. I want to move on to somewhere else. And I'm going to actually start looking around for something." And she says to me, "My boyfriend is a recruiter. Would you be okay if I forwarded your resume to him and let him know about you? Because I worked with you a little bit. I know a little bit about you, so I can actually give you a reference." And I said, that would be so fantastic. I gave her my resume. Gave it to her boyfriend, the recruiter. The next thing I know, I'm getting a call from a different government agency to come in for an interview. I interviewed with them 2 or 3 times again, and they hired me. And, ladies and gentlemen, that was the last position that I had with my 20-year career before the bubble broke. And now I transitioned out of that into entrepreneurship. And if you want to know the full story, you can always go to www.carlenemillwood.com, look under the About page, and you will see my career story there, how I transitioned from corporate Canada into entrepreneurship, doing the things that I'm really passionate about and what I really like to do. Now, I told you this really long story because we're talking about strategic relationships and how strategic relationships can assist you in getting what you want to get done, in helping you to grow, in moving you forward in your career, right? And even helping to move your business forward. So let's talk strategic relationship. Go to my website, www.carlenemillwood.com, send me a message or email me at info@carlenemillwood.com. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.